and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I'm your host, Mary Katharine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We are your morning show for any hour, moderately right and moderately reliable, all the time. We got a lot going on. Trump is the president-elect and increasingly the acting president. We've got news on Daniel Penny and that trial in New York. Another crime in New York, the CEO shooter of the healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, has been apprehended. We'll talk about that. And then all sorts of things happening in the world, which makes me weirdly happy that Trump is the acting president when we don't have one who's the actual president at the moment. So we'll get into all of that. But before we do, how you doing, Vic?
Hello, Mary Katharine. Did you ever think you'd ever say those lines that you feel calmer now that Donald Trump is the president-elect with everything that's happening in the world?
I know, and we'll get into this, but you can see it on the faces of the people he meets with.
Yes.
Everyone's like, oh, there's a person here.
They're not meeting with the old guy who you saw the photo of him, by the way, in the lighting of the Christmas tree, and that went viral.
Yeah.
The joke was that he was going to be visited by three ghosts. It's Ebenezer.
But you can see, people are like, Prince William's like, sure, I'm not a world leader, but let's sit down and have a chat.
I have thoughts on that. Okay, so before we get into that, I am doing fine, Mary Katharine. I got a pretty good head start, I think. More than a head start. I think I might almost be done with Christmas shopping.
Nice.
And the problem is I go to places and I kind of get what I think they need to get. Some of it's online, but I like to do some of it in person. I want to get to start early because you don't want to be like Saturday afternoon at a mall. That's a nightmare at this time. It's insane. But the problem for me is I keep on going into places where I see things that I want.
Yes.
And does this happen to you? Mm-hmm. Because I went into a place, I've never heard of it before, and maybe it's the kind of place for somebody of my sort of sensibility and age. It was a clothing store called Southern Tide.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I mean, so I'm not talking about the what do you call them, dock shoes and
right
and salmon colored.
This is Southern Wasp
khakis.
is
but
what
yes,
you're doing.
And what they had fleeces and things, and I know it's a little on the expensive side, but there were just
this is
the quality.
Augusta National.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's the quality of things that I like to wear, but that I'm becoming. My stuff is I was just complaining about this before the taping. I got. Kate calls me Rags Mattis sometimes because I got like holes and things. fraying and holes in socks and sweaters. I mean, I'm falling apart here. So I'm like the pigeon.
You need a cedar closet.
Oh,
that's what you need.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, in the next house.
Except then all your stuff is gonna smell like a guinea pig cage. But
and you don't want people.
I've always wondered that. I love to have a cedar chest, except everything I take out of it smells like guinea
which is
pigs.
probably that better than mothballs?
I think it's better than mothballs, but
my father has the strip that you hang and it catches moths in this, which is kind of weird though. I mean, it's like, suddenly it's like Silence of the Lambs in there, so anyway.
You know what you are, Vic? You're a man with problems of a certain era.
Oh,
you have gout and moth problems.
Yes. We're getting, I'm not far. I'm close to 60 than 40
Actually,
now.
three ghosts are going to visit you very soon.
Yes, very soon. That's right. I always prefer, the past was always very nice. The past. Present is just when you're nosy about what people are saying about you. So that's what's going on with me, and just trying to really keep my weight in control, because this is the season of going out and dinners. It's not working. I'm failing at it.
Right.
Alcohol. Jennifer just mentioned crumble cookie. My daughter's friend, this is CRUMBL, and they have several locations in our area. My daughter's friend brought over a nice long box of them, and it's like 4 cookies in one long box because they're giant cookies.
Well, the 4 cookies are like a quarter pounder with cheese size.
In which case, I would rather have the quarter pounder with cheese.
Well, you and I are the same on that front.
Well, you're not going to believe this. So I was talking to Jenna before the taping about, wow, I had just gained 3-4 pounds over the weekend. What just happened to me? And last night after dinner, which I thought was for me a relatively light dinner, I had one of those crumble cookies, and I had a knife, so I said, I'll just cut off a piece of it, and I just kept on cutting and cutting and cutting. And Jennifer says one of those cookies is what, 16? 16? Yeah. between 1,000 and 1,600 calories.
That's a lot.
That's
a
insane.
lot.
So as you mentioned, I would have rather had the quarter pounder with cheese and fries.
That's what I would do.
So
yeah.
this is a struggle, and there's just a little warning. Try to share those things with your family members. This is what I'm saying for Advent. Do it for Advent. Mary Katharine, how are you? What's going on?
I'm okay. Doing the Christmas prep, we're all right. I have to say I am wearing out the safety officer at our home, Steve, because we have toddlers and a Christmas tree. Okay, this is difficult.
Yes.
And I've lightly vetted the ornaments, but not well enough because the youngest, our young man, who has quite an arm on him, has figured out that he can pull some of those baubles off the tree and launch them. And several of them, which were they're very cheap ornaments, so I just wasn't concerned about them.
There's the lower one. The lower part of the tree should be the cheaper ones.
Well, these are very cheap, and they're so cheap and so old that I assumed they were plastic. They're very light.
Yeah.
They're like just
right.
And I was putting them on the tree, and it turns out that those balls, nope, those were made of glass.
Oh,
and
no.
so he's like shattered several, and then I had to go through the whole tree again last night. And then when they shatter, the glass goes all over the place. You have two toddlers you're trying to prevent from walking into it. It all descends into chaos, and you have to do cleanup very quickly. Now, we have children who are trained for this, so we can have one of the girls handle the toddlers in the living room. We sort of rope them off, and then we have another kid, while I'm sweeping the big pieces, go get the hand vac from downstairs, and then we get the quick
thorough.
So we got that under control, and it's just a process. Granted, I should have vetted the tree better, but now I've been looking through the tree, and I think we've gotten everything out of it that could be problematic.
It's perilous when you have the ornaments that shatter. Neither they're glass or they're one of those kind of like metal
ceramic
shards.
or something, right.
Yes, and so they have these little shards. And it's bad when even if it happens on my watch, and this is like a long time ago, Kate will tell me, "Don't touch it. There's glass. Don't touch it." She's warning me not to hurt myself. Let alone
don't walk around, Vic.
Yeah, let alone the toddlers. That's scary.
No, so we've got a process in place, and now I think I've vetted properly, which I should have done in the first place. But we're moving forward. And then other than that, I was gonna say, it sounded when you were shopping like you might be shopping to go to I don't know, an SEC championship game.
You would show up in
like the one that happened this week, won by the University of Georgia Bulldogs.
Wow.
In one overtime this time, not 8. I told Steve when it went to overtime, I can't handle more than one, Steve. I think I'm going to have to leave if there's more than one overtime.
What is Georgia's position in the playoffs then?
So we have a bye week.
Oh, you have a bye week.
Nice. We earned a bye week by winning that game. We do have a very strong strength of schedule. I think if we'd lost that game closely, we still would have been in, but we wouldn't have earned the bye week. And then Alabama watching from the outside. There's no NIT for the this
harsh.
tournament, friends.
She's so mean.
I know. Look, it's been a lot of years that Alabama's been given the benefit of the doubt on these things, and not this year. So, although I think
in Michigan too, right? Michigan is not a
and I think I didn't know that when they expanded to 12, when they expanded to 4, it seemed to increase the whining by 4x. And now that they've expanded to 12 teams, you'd think it would solve that problem, but no, it just expanded the whining to 12x. So here we go.
Yeah. And it's you and I guess it's Georgia, Oregon gets the other bye.
Yes. So, I'd have to look at the bracket again, but at any rate, I'm soaking this up right now.
Oh, yes.
The
I
SEC
look at
championship of it all.
Yes.
We do have an injured quarterback, but we played half of that game, which is the only half we play. We don't like to play in the first half with a backup, and it, they did well for us.
Good.
So
good. Wonderful.
We'll see how it goes. Other than that, just wrapping presents. I wrapped 6 presents yesterday, and I was like, I'm tired.
That's you know what?
I'm done, guys.
I hate wrapping presents. I really do, because I don't know how a cake does it where you can just cut in a straight line as opposed to the jagged edges, and so I'll do this, and I feel like I use more gift wrap than I need.
I imagine you probably do.
And so what I like,
I love this about men, by the way, with their
really? I imagine Steve's good. He could probably do everything.
Well,
right?
one would think all these men with their analytical minds and their engineering bents, and yet they can't figure out how to measure paper to get it around a square-shaped package. It's so strange. And my husband is like famously exacting about almost everything.
Yes.
The two things he's not: making the bed, wrapping presents.
Has he ever done what I did, which is sometimes when I run out, then I have to take another extra part of a gift wrapper
and just tape
and
it
just
on
tape
there?
it on it,
Yes,
to cover it up.
It's tragic.
No,
it is
yes,
indeed tragic. But we get very endearing brown paper wrapped, sort of potato shaped presents.
Yeah, it always matters what's on the inside, as they say. How do you feel about like bags that you could just put?
I like bags.
Is that like a cheap sort of that?
Look, it's a bit of a cop out, but it
right?
looks nice under the tree.
Yes.
My philosophy is you have to earn the gift bag. You have to do like 3 real wrappings
in order to get to that
before you get to the gift bag. You can't just gift bag everything.
I do not do ribbon.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody like Kate will do ribbon. I don't know what's going on there. Even though I worked at a Hallmark, I worked at a Hallmark store, so I should know about the ribbons.
I know.
I should be trained.
Oh my gosh! At one point,
this is a whole. By the way, in case you're wondering, the whole episode. I know we were going to talk about Daniel Penny, but no, we're going to talk about gift wrapping.
One last point.
Yes.
And I apologize if I smear one of my brothers over the other, because right now I'm having trouble remembering which one it is. I think it's John. So, for years, John has basically feigned that he can't wrap presents. And at one point, my other brother and I was like, Owen, can you believe this guy can't wrap presents? And Owen's like, he can 100% wrap presents. He's just having the rest of us do it for him. And I was like, oh. Yeah, that one got by me for a couple of years, because it's just one of those things in your head that you're like, and I apologize to either brother if I have messed up the order of that. But in your head, you're like, it's built in that this person doesn't have this skill, and we just sort of help him out.
Well, it makes his life easier.
That's nice. But not if you're getting duped. Anyway, okay, let's talk about the news.
Let's do it.
Okay, sounded like a drop. We should use that more often. Let's do it. Okie doke. First up, we have President-elect Trump visiting France for the rededication and opening of Notre Dame. By the way, just moving on its face. It was very cool to see that happen. It was cool to see French society be able to rebuild that. It was cool to see the beauty be rebuilt, to hear the organ play.
Well, and in a way, yes. And in a way, to see what people might have seen 900 years ago, whenever it was built, and with the stone and everything else and the lighting. And obviously, I think it's even more illuminated and more sunlight comes in now than at the time.
Right.
So they made some improvements.
So that part was gorgeous. Also, to see a very secular state in a very secular Europe get together to embrace and celebrate this symbol was interesting to me, and sort of a nod and a wink from perhaps on high about the culture shift, the vibe shift brings all of these secular heads of state to Notre Dame to celebrate this symbol of the Catholic faith.
Yes.
Oh, how interesting. Anyway, so there's that.
So, everybody was there, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned President-elect Trump. And he had given an interview to Diana Glebova from the New York Post. She's a great reporter. And he talked about a lot of things, about all the people he met. We can discuss that. But one of the things he talked about, which I think is always very interesting, was about the renovation of Notre Dame. Now, at first he referred to it as the chapel, and I'm not sure if he's talking about the inside of Notre Dame or is he referring to the entire cathedral as the chapel, but later on he refers to it as the cathedral. He knows a lot about buildings and renovations.
Yeah.
He really does.
It makes sense that he would be at this particular event. Yes.
And he had such interesting observations. Our friend Mike Warren went around with Trump and other reporters at the time when Trump took over the old post office and turned it into the Trump Hotel. And and that in itself was a whole. He fooled all the reporters because they thought he was going to talk about Obama not being an American citizen, if you remember. And in fact, I mean, it was a
He's like,
total.
just look at my hotel.
Yeah, just look at my hotel. So they end up going around anyway. But the fact is, he knows all these minute details about what it takes to construct and renovate very large buildings. And he was talking about being able to wash the stones and the stained glass, all these different things in Notre Dame. And he knows a lot about this. And you forget, he's not a real estate mogul. He's a real estate developer, and that's a very different line of work.
By the way, just for the stats, some vague stats on this, and don't hold me to every single one. It looks like tens of thousands of individuals donated to the rebuilding. Several notable French billionaires gave large amounts of money, $218 million by one, $109 million from another. And then various, the International Olympic Committee looks like it donated. So it was a real group effort to get this done. And I think a contrast, as I note the vibe shift, to the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, which scandalized some people with the the dirtying up of some religious symbols. So this was an interesting bookend to that.
That is, and I think among the donors, I think the Biden family gave a lot of money just for the indulgence, so they can get their clean slate.
Indeed.
Anyway,
well, they have money to give.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding about that.
But yeah, so Trump is there.
He met with
meeting with leaders, hanging out with public figures. I noted that not only did Prince William meet with Trump, but
heir to the throne.
But he put Trump on his Instagram, which I think a couple of years ago might not have happened. I would have to fact check this, but I don't think that Prince William was A, looking for a meeting with Trump unless it had to happen, or B, putting it on his Instagram to say, I met with Trump.
People, I hear this is secondhand, of people I know who have met with Trump one-on-one, who initially might have had a real dislike for him, distaste for him. And after the meeting, they say, I get it. Yes. I see what the appeal is.
Perhaps we saw that in the eyes of Jill Biden while she was
next
to him.
Well, this is the thing, because she represented the actual current administration in the United States. I mean, she is the current First Lady of the United States.
She's the ceremonial president of the United States. We actually have co-ceremonial presidents of the United States right now, and no vice president and no president and half a vice president. That's the secret sauce for America right now.
Yes, she is still the vice president of the United States. She is still a heartbeat away from the presidency. So, to go quickly back to Trump in Notre Dame, and he meets with Jill Biden. He sees Jill Biden, and everyone talks about the photo, and it seemed very cordial. And Trump himself had said that she could not have been kinder and gracious and kind. So they didn't talk about any of this other stuff. My favorite part of the photo, if you look at it, is on the lower left side is Prince William, and he's staring. This guy, this guy's the future king of England, and he's like, oh, this is a big moment, And they had a meeting with Prince William did, and what did Trump say? He said he's a handsome guy. You know how some people, he said, are better looking in person? Well, he is really, really good looking.
I do. It feels as though the vacuum left by Biden, which is genuinely dangerous. Yeah. And I think they should probably 25th Amendment him and put Kamala Harris in, although she seems often impaired when she makes appearances. But I think she would be better than him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like
I know. Okay. Well, that's what the voters decided too. I think the vacuum, which is dangerous, has led to people feeling reassured by Trump being on the world stage, which they might not have expected several years ago. And it seems to have given some sort of permission for enjoying his company.
Yeah.
Because I have heard, I have barely met him in person, just 2 times very briefly. And he was plenty nice in those moments, but it was a very brief encounter. But I have heard almost without fail that meeting him in person, he is extremely charming and engaging. Mm-hmm. And it does seem like the Macrons of the world are just like, sure, let's do this.
Yeah, we might as well just,
I don't like those 100% tariff ideas on the champagne.
the champagne. But no, I didn't know about Prince William posting him on Instagram. But that is a big deal because, you're talking about somebody who we were told is the next Hitler.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of, the Windsors. Okay, I can make a joke there.
We could go there.
We could go there.
Okay.
I won't go there.
By the way, you noted before we started the show that the picture with Joe Biden was used to advertise Trump's new Trump perfumes and colognes.
I thought this was a parody.
Nope. Here are my new Trump perfumes and colognes! ! Mr. Trump wrote on social media on Sunday, reports the New York Times, along with a picture of his interaction with the faintly smiling First Lady. I think it was a little bit more than faint, but I call them, Trump says, fight, 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 because they represent us winning. Great Christmas gifts for the family. Honestly, it might be a great Christmas gift for someone in my family. We'll see.
The cologne is called Fight, Fight, Fight.
And under the photo is a caption, a fragrance your enemies can't resist.
All right, I want our listeners to know, this is all news to me. I've never heard this. I'm not sure what to make of it.
Yeah.
I would like to know,
it's in the New York Times, so it may or may not be true.
No, I want to know, how does it smell? That's what I want. Is it overpowering? Is it overpowering?
Is that our next test subject?
Oh, yeah, on me? Yeah.
For a show, we have to...
Yes, the fragrance test. We'll have that, and Polo, and then Drakkar. Oh no! What's the one that I was talking about on the on this episode? On a previous episode, because I love the commercial for the one where I can't believe I forget the name of this because I made a joke about it even in the Weekend Beacon newsletter.
Water?
No, it's the one where the three women there with foreign accents and exotic, and they're sitting there blindfolded, and then the woman says, can you tell me when it happens? When it happens. And then the guy walks in and they smell him blindfolded, and the one woman has this exhalation, which is extremely suggestive.
Oh, gravité.
Gravité. Thank you. Oh, my good.
Gravité.
Gravité. And she goes, bring him back, she says. Maybe somebody gets me that for Christmas.
Hey, it could
I want to see if it works. Okay.
It could happen. All right. So that is interesting. He does this interview with Welker, Kristen Welker of NBC.
Meet the Press.
With Meet the Press. It's a long interview. A lot going on there. But I thought a couple things. One, he seemed calm.
Yes.
And I wonder if, again, I don't ever look for a giant change in Trump. I think the one time I hoped it might be possible was post-assassination.
Yeah.
However, he did seem quite measured. He didn't seem to get real punchy with her. It is possible that several assassination attempts, on top of having decisively won this election, put the things that he was peevish about behind him to some extent. And then the other thing that struck me is that she's asking questions about things that she's ready for him to be super apocalyptically domineering about and scary.
Yeah.
And he's just not. So she asked, in particular, she says, well, what about Jerome Powell? He says he wouldn't leave if you asked him to. And are you planning to, what would you do? And he's like, I'm not planning to get rid of him. And she seems quite crestfallen.
Yeah. She was hoping it was going to be this moment where he's going to
Jerome Powell is
Saturday Night Massacre.
Jerome Powell is head of the Fed. I think it's out of line, frankly, for him to say he wouldn't go if Trump asked him.
Yeah.
And Trump said a funny thing, which was like, well, he might say no if I asked him. I think if I told him, he would go. But I don't have plans to do that.
I don't know if Kristen Welker and NBC genuinely appreciated this kind of a format for an interview versus having to deal with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz or Joe Biden for that matter, right? Yeah. But they should because it struck me as not being very sort of scripted teleprompters. I don't know what the ground rules were, but it seemed very freewheeling.
Wide-ranging, just back and forth. Again, he seemed calm. Even things like, obviously I disagree with him on tariffs, but he's saying they're not going to cost anyone anything. The economy was great last time. Look, I think there are plenty of points you can push back on there. However, what he also indicated is that he sort of knew how to defend his first term.
Yeah.
And B, he sort of indicated, yeah, this might just be a negotiation tactic. Now, she asked him outright, are your tariffs a negotiation tactic or are they real? And it's like, well, if he tells you the truth, he can't use them as a negotiating tactic. So, But he did.
Are you bluffing?
He did point to several instances where he's used them to that effect.
Effectively, yeah.
Which I think is something that Americans are not upset about.
Yeah.
He was then asked about deportation. He reiterated that mass deportation is an intention. I don't think that Welker understands that a lot of Americans are fine with that now because they have been radicalized by the Biden administration on this issue.
And there are actual polling results that show that a majority of Americans are fine with it.
But he emphasized over and over again that crime was the first level offense they're going to work. Like we're going after criminals first.
Trendy Aragua.
We're going after gangs. He mentioned again the Colorado takeovers by gangs of apartment buildings. This is the old battles, right? She's still fighting an old battle. She says the local law enforcement says that's not true.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
So I guess it's not.
There's video.
Right.
As J.D. Vance famously asked, how many is okay with you?
Right. Is just one. If I'm okay with, one complex being taken over by a foreign gang that's not supposed to be here with guns.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found it to be a very, dare we say, normal interview.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure is what she wanted.
Right. And again, this was, it might have been as revealing to her as it was to us that he was this very placid and calm. I mean, again, he's not seeking re-election. This is it. He won. He got everything that he wanted in that sense. And he's just looking for 4 years, what he can do for the country, his legacy. So, I mean, it is going to be interesting if he ends up reverting to his old petty, mean self and with lack of self-control.
Sometimes he will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's just allow for that.
Yeah.
This, by the way, the broadcast version was, I think, about 35 minutes long. The full version, 76 minutes.
Yeah.
He sat down with her.
And unlike 60 Minutes, transcripts are provided.
Yes, we do have a transcript. So I think it's just an improvement to have someone who will sit down with press for an extended period of time. I would also suggest he continue to do it with non-traditional forms of press.
For sure.
Because I think they ask more interesting questions.
Right.
Often.
And I don't get the sense that NBC was going to edit or hide anything that he says that's going to be embarrassing. They're not going to cover for him. So what you see is what you get.
Yeah. I'll play, let's see what we got here. I'll play two clips for us. One where he's asked about putting Liz Cheney in jail.
And what did they do? They deleted and destroyed a whole year and a half worth of testimony. Do you know that I think those people committed a major crime.
Sir.
And Cheney was behind it.
Well,
and so was Benny Thompson and everybody on that committee. For what they did, honestly, they should go to jail.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee, you think
I think
should
everybody
go to jail.
Anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to jail?
No, not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to focus on drill, baby, drill.
When you say that, it carries
strengthening
weight, though. You've tapped these people to lead the Justice Department and FBI.
They can do whatever they want.
Okay.
So this is the dichotomy of Trump, right? He's going to say they should go to jail. Yes, I am naming people to DOJ who might pursue that. By the way, they did do things that were very wrong.
Yeah.
With the information from the J6 hearings. And then he's like, no, I'm not going to tell him to do that.
Yeah, it reminds me yet again of my favorite great drama series of all time, The Sopranos. Mm-hmm. And Tony trying to figure out what to do with Jackie Jr., the kid who has crossed them. Do you actually have to kill him? And it's not his responsibility. It's one of his captains, Ralphie. And what does he tell Ralphie? Because Ralphie says, I don't know what to do because, I'm dating the mom. He's a nice kid. I don't know what to. And he just says, I'm sure you'll do the right thing. And that's probably what he'll tell Kash Patel. I'm sure you'll do the right thing.
Here's Trump asked about Chris Wray.
Sir, are you going to fire the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who you appointed?
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it.
Right. I'm suing the country?
I can't say I'm thrilled with him. I do think he has a point.
Yeah. Okay. So what he's referring to, of course, is the
raid
documents,
on Mar-a-Lago,
the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Okay. Christopher Wray did not break into his house himself.
There was a warrant involved.
Yes, that's right.
I do think Trump is well within his rights to dismiss Wray, just as he was well within his rights to dismiss Comey. And we found out, certainly, if not during, but after the fact, that Comey should have been fired.
Right.
So these are the kind of things that will give Welker the vapors, but do not give me the vapors.
No, considering that FBI had, secretly infiltrated Catholic masses to monitor what? Homilies? Looking for, white supremacist groups among traditional Latin mass Catholics.
If Kash Patel could just be like,
it's nuts.
So can we focus on the solving crimes? Can we focus on that? Then I think that would be a success.
That's right.
That would be a success.
Right.
Okay. Up next, we have the Daniel Penny verdict. So Daniel Penny is at the time was 24, former Marine on a subway car in May of 2023 when Jordan Neely, a 30-year-old man with a history of mental illness and substance abuse and many arrests, including several assault charges, came onto a subway car and was yelling and threatening the people on the subway car. Mm-hmm. There were women and children in this subway car. He was a large man, taller than Daniel Penny, who's 6'2". And Penny took out his earphones, noticing this man, and starts hearing him say, "I will kill all of you."
Yeah, someone's going to die.
Somebody's going to die. I'm not afraid to go to prison for the rest of my life. And decides that it's worth restraining this person to get the cop before we get the cops here, so that everyone's not cowering in fear and worried about this person hurting them. Now, the way it's framed, this incident by the New York Times today is, so you got a not guilty verdict, okay? This is the New York Times. What I just described to you. Jury acquits man who was choking rider on subway. Jordan Neely, rider of subway.
At least they didn't do the, jury acquits white guy of killing black man.
Well, I'm sure it's in the second graph.
Yes,
that's right. If we got to the nut graph, I'm sure it would be there. So this is a very different situation than what the New York Times and others are framing. I don't think they get that by people now anymore. It didn't get past the jury, who again found him not guilty unanimously. It got a little weird last week, and I think we talked about this. There were two charges. Yeah. One, a more serious charge of manslaughter.
Right.
And two, criminally negligent homicide.
Right.
The jury instructions were that if they couldn't come to an agreement on the first, they should not consider the second. The case goes to the jury. Mm-hmm. The jury is deliberating. They can't come to an agreement on the first charge. Mm-hmm. This would have resulted in a mistrial.
Right.
Because they come back deadlocked twice. The government talks to the judge and says, well, what if we just dismiss that first charge and have them consider the lesser charge?
Right.
To this point, I don't think anyone has shown any precedent for doing this in New York state law. They would have had a field day on appeal.
Yeah.
The defense would have. But the idea, it seems, was by the judge and the government to get a second bite of this apple while the trial is happening and get him convicted of this lesser charge. It turned out they didn't see it that way. The jury came back on Monday, deliberated for like an hour and a half, and came back with a not guilty.
It's very interesting trying to figure out the behavior of juries. The first thing is, I have to say, it was very reassuring when, number one, they couldn't come to agreement on manslaughter. Number two, when they came back very quickly and did not find him guilty on the second charge, that these New Yorkers, Americans in general, still have their wits about them and common sense and an understanding of decency and what Daniel Penny was trying to prevent from happening, because it seems to me that Jordan Neely was definitely what you would call an imminent danger.
Yes.
To others or
That
himself.
he's referred to as unarmed, but unarmed does not mean not a threat.
Right.
And it's worth noting Daniel Penny was also not armed and put himself at physical risk to protect others.
Right. And the argument was that, of course, for the prosecutor's argument, Alvin Bragg's argument was that Daniel Penny is a former a Marine. He's a Marine veteran, sergeant.
Right.
And that he knows how to use lethal force, and therefore he could have used less to subdue him. But I think the message was, had they found him guilty, and every day in that outside that courtroom, you can hear them, you know, the protesters with Black Lives Matter in New York,
Right.
you know, organized by Hawk
BLM.
Newsom is his name. They're yelling guilty, 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 and the whole thing. Had they found him guilty, the message would be, well, if you see something, just let it happen. Don't do something. The NYPD obviously can't be everywhere at the same time, but, you know, you don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to get involved. Oh, they're threatening an old person or a child. Well, let's just see what happens before. I should wait until that person is harmed before I do something, like call 911. Otherwise, mind your own business. And Jordan Neely had previously assaulted a 67-year-old. And then as part of the deal, he had to receive treatment, and then he voluntarily left
Less
a few
than
days
2
later.
weeks. Or it was like a very short time in the treatment that he was provided. It's worth noting some of the BLM crowds outside of the courthouse. There's a quote from one of the speakers: "These wonderful white people, I hope they celebrate their Christmas. Goddamn them and goddamn America."
Yeah.
My friend
That's a Jeremiah.
Yeah.
What was
Jeremiah Wright?
Right. He said that, right? Yeah.
My friend Guy Benson notes the jury was majority female, included 4 people of color. The acquittal was unanimous. Of course, those people of color don't matter, nor do the people of color who helped Daniel Penny restrain Neely.
Yeah. Did they matter?
And a woman of color who was I believe, a defense witness who thanked him for his protection. I'm just baffled by the left on this particular subject, on self-defense.
Yeah.
Because I'm just so far from them. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett says Jordan Neely was unarmed. He needed support and care. Instead, he received a death sentence. His family grieves while the man who took his life walks free. Okay.
Wow.
We also learned in the trial that Neely was alive when cops arrived. Right. So when first aid, when paramedics arrived on the scene, he was alive.
Right.
This idea that is the role of Daniel Penny or anyone else on that subway car when the state has not helped Neely up until this point, or he's refused the help he's been given.
Right.
When his father, mother, family, friends, anyone close to him tragically has been unable to solve Neely's problems. Neely himself has been unable to solve his problems for 30 years. That the people on that car being threatened, they're the ones who are supposed to divine and somehow help Jordan Neely. And if they don't do that by sitting silently and getting, I don't know, the crap beat out of them, then they're the problem.
Yeah, you're supposed to just take it. And I think a lot of people are like, I'm not going to anymore. And to quote Dee Snider, but you mentioned the Congresswoman. I mean, how often does she take the New York subway? Every day?
Well, and I imagine she would have security who would react differently.
Right.
Than she's suggesting they should. Would they react with support and care?
Yeah.
If she was around someone
like
Neely, I don't think they would.
Would she be like, well, I'm sure he needs help, and if he strikes me, well, so be it. I don't think so. So that's particularly maddening. We talk about the jury and how they couldn't reach a verdict initially on the main charge, the serious one, which was manslaughter. It's unclear to me from what I've read what that breakdown is of who was decided, who was undecided. It could have been one person. And as other people suggested, and you had suggested, when they couldn't come to that, and it wasn't, and they didn't just say, okay, well, it's a hung jury, that's it, and instead they said, let's drop that and try to pursue the lesser charge, because even on that charge, we could be able to put him away for 4 years, right? Maybe the jury reacted harshly to that. You were saying,
yeah, I do. there seemed to be an attempt to work the jury and to
Yeah.
work the system quite openly in a way that was pretty gross. And it occurred to me, as it probably does to many people watching this process under the leadership of Alvin Bragg, these are the public cases. These
Yeah.
are the ones that everyone's watching, and
Yeah.
they're still this badly behaved, just like with the Trump one.
Yeah.
Same with Georgia, by the way.
Yeah.
And Fannie Willis. Like, if this is how you behave when everyone's watching you,
Yeah.
what does it mean for what happens when they're not watching you? And I do wonder if when they reshaped the jury instructions, the jury was like, nah, we
Right.
don't do this.
Right.
If you're there and you're doing the job and by the way, you're doing it at some personal risk because there's a
Right.
mob that wants the correct verdict here. And you're doing that job and you're taking it seriously, and then you're kind of jerked around like this.
Right.
I could imagine having a reaction to that.
Right. And again, I've served on a jury twice. And once we found the person not guilty, and then the second time we found the accused guilty. And you go through several rounds, obviously, and people do flip-flop back and forth. And at the end, regardless, like in the first time we found this person not guilty of assault,
Right.
the prosecutors come up to us later and they just ask us, like, why?
Right.
They can't retry him,
Right.
but they want to know what was, and it was like, well, there was a lot of questions that were just not answered, and we're going to, so that's usually how these things happen. But,
Yeah.
but the people who are now outraged by this, including
Oh.
George Neely's father, and there's a civil suit, as you know,
Yes.
which, they stand to get a lot from him.
I don't think
Whatever
it-
Daniel Penny has, they want.
I don't think it's too cynical to note that people who were absent from Neely's life while he was
Yeah.
piling up problems,
Right.
Particularly his father, might be just here for the payout.
Right. Right.
And that's a pretty gross look.
Yeah, they're here for this, and they weren't there at the time. And
I was thinking, by the way, that it's a shame for Penny that if he wanted to make his life in New York City, that's what he was doing, and it's a shame for him that he's a very distinct looking man.
Yeah.
Who, if he wants to walk around New York City, is probably going to have some issues. And
extremely curly hair.
the governor of Florida has invited him there.
The other thing is when they throw around terms like vigilante
Yeah.
and vigilante justice, this is not Bernie Goetz, right? And if you remember from the 1980s, and Bernie Goetz, and he had shot, I think, 3 individuals in a subway. So Bernie Goetz, I mean, and he brought a handgun with him, and in the subway, then was looking for trouble, and then knew that he was going to get it. Sort of Charles Bronson style, where these guys ask him for $5, and he's ready for it because he knows he's about to get mugged, or he thinks he is, and he's like, "Yeah, I got $5," and then
Oh, my
this is
goodness.
not Daniel Penny, is all I'm
No.
saying. Okay,
Well,
and so,
and he restrained him for a subway stop, I think, and then police arrived. He
Right.
was alive at that point. He
Right.
he lost consciousness
Right.
and then was later declared dead.
and there's issues of the toxicology report, right? Because Jordan Neely was, of course, he was schizophrenic, and he had K2, which is a synthetic marijuana.
Right.
It's not good.
It is Neely's life is sad.
Yeah.
No one disputes this.
Right.
But the problem is that in the end, what New York does is, and what Bragg does specifically, is not help the Neelys of the world
Right.
very much. And then it ignores the crimes that they commit. It leaves the law-abiding people subject to repeated abuses by violent offenders
Right.
for this reason. And now it is going to deprive the law-abiding citizens of both a state willing to help them and good Samaritans.
Yeah.
Because every good Samaritan looks at Penny and is like, well, yeah, sure, he got acquitted, but there
Right.
will be this civil trial.
That's right.
His life is ruined. He's had to spend God knows how much money and
Yeah,
stress
and his
over
time.
the past
Yeah.
year and a half. And he gets his not guilty, but he doesn't get his life back.
No, for trying to do the right thing.
Ugh.
And so it's like, would you do it again? And so you're right. I mean, that's the depressing message of what's happening in New York City is prosecutors like Alvin Bragg not wanting to go after the people who are a danger and threat to innocent New Yorkers. So.
I wonder if Bragg would be willing to go after Luigi Mangione.
Hey, there we go.
So we have a suspect apprehended.
Yes.
In the case of the cold-blooded murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
Yeah.
He is a young man named Luigi Mangione. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
You have the E at the end?
I assume no relation to Chuck Mangione, the trumpeter.
Yeah. He was the valedictorian of his all-boys school in
the
Baltimore.
Gilman School, yes.
He went to Penn State, where he got 2 engineering degrees, I believe.
Yeah, and the school he went to in Maryland was, I think, tuition is almost $40,000 a year.
Yeah, he has been living in Hawaii recently. He, at some point, sort of vanished from both his social media and his family and friends, maybe about 6 months ago. Some of the reporting, People magazine in particular, talked to some friends of his, said he had a back surgery and kind of dipped out on everybody after that. And you can see in his social media, friends messaging him and saying, you know, where are you? You made commitments to me about being in my wedding. I haven't heard from you in months. Are you just really isolated? I need to know what's going on with you. So something seriously going on with this young man, it seems like, which is, by the way, just to tell you the facts, not to make any excuses for this shooting or this execution. There are plenty of excuses being made for it. I will not be doing that. Yeah. But this is just the facts about the guy that they apprehended. They found him in Altoona, Pennsylvania at a McDonald's where apparently an elderly customer had recognized him from the security camera.
Right, which is amazing because I think, obviously he had a mask, but he had to remove the mask to eat, so there you go.
So somebody saw him, called police. Police came in. He had on him a ghost gun.
Yeah. Silencer, I think.
Several.
They don't like to call it a silencer. What do they call it? A suppressor, yeah.
Several fake IDs, including a fake ID that matched the one he had used, that the perp had used at a hostel in New York City. So that's where we are right now. The guy's politics are kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
He followed a lot of different people of different persuasions. He seemed a bit like a biohacking, he listened to Huberman, but he also was anti-capitalist and followed AOC. So there's a lot go.
And of course, the writings of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Oh yes.
So that's a big thing.
So it's interesting because the left had very much embraced this shooter as a folk hero until
it's dark.
Until it came out that his tweets were like not uniformly left, and then they were like, "Oh, see, the bad murderer is your bad murderer."
Right.
And it's like, well, so I have the advantage of thinking murder was wrong the whole time.
That's crazy.
No matter what his
motivations.
motivations.
Who thinks like that, Mary Katharine?
Oh, it's actually scary how many people I thought were normal are like, the murderer has a point.
It's okay.
Really?
So let me just say this, right? Dealing with health insurance is not fun.
Right.
A lot of times, you deal with the deductibles, high deductibles, and then I'm dealing with something right now. I remember when I was getting my tooth extracted and I had to pay for the anesthesia. They only paid part of it or something.
Right.
Yeah, it's annoying and it's bad. And at no time did I think I want to kill the CEO.
Yes.
I mean, that's insane.
Yes.
So, but the idea that these people are like, well, they had it coming. Well, you can understand. And well.
Or that you should, let me just put a ground rule in. If someone is summarily executed for the job they have, and that man is like a middle-class Iowan kid who grew up to have a nice family and be the CEO of a health insurance company, you should wait until at least a suspect is apprehended before you neatly pivot to your preferred policy prescription.
Right.
There's
a lot of projecting going on there.
I just think that should be the standard. Meanwhile, Taylor Lorenz has been telling everybody, actually, we should find this clip.
I am speaking to the sentiment people do want these executives dead. If you have
But you
watched,
said we want them dead, and I guess
I
that's.
mean, look, I'm gonna say I'm with the people in the sense that if you have watched a loved one die because insurance has denied them life-saving essential health care, it is natural to wish that the people who run those systems would suffer the same fate as your loved one. And millions of people across America have had this experience. So yes, am I, when I say, do I wish someone dead, is that advocating for them to be killed? No, of course not. But am I going to shed tears or have a lot of empathy for somebody that has facilitated the deaths of thousands of innocent Americans through intentionally denying them coverage? I am not going to, weep over it. I do think that loss of life is a tragedy. I'm very against death generally, as a principle. But I think, again, why do we mourn certain deaths and condone other deaths of innocent, vulnerable people?
Shockingly, she was let go at the New York Times, and then she left the Washington Post to be an independent journalist. And then she had a deal with Vox Media for podcasting that was coming to an end, and then Vox just decided we're just going to end it now. I think it'd be a good idea because she's doubled down on
she's still
this
saying
sort
it.
of and she was on a show with Piers Morgan, in fact, and Piers Morgan was how the bleep can you smile at this, talking about his death, and she's all for it.
Yeah.
So
some of the most menacing threats come in vocal fry, it turns out.
I mean, it really does bring out the worst.
When I say I want people dead, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm calling for them to be murdered.
I'm still trying to parse that too, which is, okay, I want them dead, but it doesn't mean I want them to die. I just want them to die. What's happening here?
I don't specify the method.
Yeah. But as you were saying, he's definitely going to be considered this hero, and he'll have this following of.
Well, I think his tweets sort of complicate his folk hero story, right?
Okay.
Because at one point he says something about Tucker Carlson being right, and the left will not therefore allow him to be exactly this cultural hero. He will have many fans among the ladies of social media and the gay men. He's a good-looking young man, and that is not a good read on our culture. He has gained many, many followers on Instagram and
is that right?
Twitter
and
on X since the time of the announcement of the suspicion of him for this crime, and so I don't think that reflects well on us. And I'm just begging Rolling Stone not to put him on the cover, like they did Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, who was the bomber at the Boston Marathon.
Yeah, that was sick.
Because he had similarly sort of matinee idol looks, and they decided that he should go on the cover of a magazine. Yeah. So let's not do that.
I was going to say something about him in prison, but I'm not going to. Yeah, just okay.
Yeah, we're gonna avoid that one. It is an odd story that the alleged perpetrator here seemed to be a guy who had tons of opportunity, tons of money, an Ivy League education, good jobs, and we will find out more about.
But I mean,
wrong. But you know who also had a lot of things going for him? Brian Thompson, and now that father of two is gone.
It's also like he was trying to escape, and yet he almost wants to be caught, right? Because he's written his manifesto. He had things written on the shell casing.
He does have a manifesto.
What is this? The Monopoly money that he had, as well as, and the $8,000 that was not his. But then it's like, what is happening here? So obviously, not well.
Yeah. By the way, I just want to note that Thompson had an interesting backstory. He's born in Ames, Iowa. He's one of two sons to a grain elevator worker. Was his dad. I think his mom might have been a homemaker. He was the valedictorian of his high school class. And then he went to the University of Iowa in Iowa City, where he got a bachelor's degree in business administration and met his wife. And now he's gone. Yeah. So I just don't want to overly focus on Mangione, because it's going to people's curiosity, this young man's story, but we should
Yeah, nobody knows enough about Brian
make
Thompson.
sure we keep our eye on that too.
That's good. And you also mentioned about Obamacare being, everyone's so angry at the
Oh,
insurance
yeah, no,
companies, but a lot of it stems to Obamacare policies.
There's this thing where people say, oh, people are so understandably mad at the healthcare system in this country, and therefore that justifies murder. Okay, no, it doesn't. I've been plenty mad several times over my healthcare, including during the time that Obamacare made me lose 3 or 4 plans, one of which when I was 30 plus weeks pregnant. And I was, never enticed to murder anyone over it. But it's an interesting take from the left, which says we fixed healthcare with Obamacare. Yeah. There were no downsides, remember? No. Everyone was going to be a winner in Obamacare. Everything was going to be great. The cost curve would go down.
Keep your doctor.
Life expectancy would go up. And it turns out that the cost curve went up and life expectancy went down. So oops. Our bad.
Yeah.
So if you pitch us on Obamacare is going to fix everything with no downsides, and then several years later you're like just erasing all of that and blaming it on health insurance companies, perhaps we should readdress the overhauling of the system by the exact people who say that it is still poisonous and awful.
Yeah, exactly.
Just saying. Anyway, it's a sad, weird story.
It is.
So on Daniel Penny, I'm glad we have the acquittal. On this guy, get a little less excuse making for him. That's another thing that blows my mind. The left, and I don't mean all of them, but the very online left especially, and some of them are Congress people, look at Daniel Penny and obviously see an awful person. And then they look at the guy who summarily executes a man in the street over his job, and they go, but maybe he had a point. Nope. I'm not there. I will never be there.
No, and I think that I'd like to think yet again that most Americans are not there either, and as a result, they'll continue to get this wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you can overread how many people feel this way, but I will say on the CEO thing, before we had somebody apprehended, I saw a lot more people I believed to be relatively normal.
Yeah,
talking about how this was a good opportunity to discuss your insurance premiums. And I was like, I don't think I feel that way.
Yeah.
As I said about Sunny Hostin was on The View saying, this is just a chance for us to really reflect on people's feelings about healthcare. And I was like, you absolutely under no circumstances got to hand it to a murderer for giving all of us the chance to reflect our feelings about healthcare. You are free to do that anytime.
Yeah.
Without a murder.
Yeah. It's
wild. Wow. It's uncivilized. Uncivilized.
It is.
And Taylor Lorenz, who I don't want to give too much attention because that's what she's angling for now.
Yes, she is.
But it is worth noting that she has always been this person or this person adjacent.
Yes.
And the Washington Post and the New York Times, 2 entities that, to my knowledge, have never fought over the journalistic gifts of you or I, Vic.
Yeah.
We're happy,
her, on the other hand,
to fight over Taylor Lorenz. Because she's in the right bubble.
That's right.
But that bubble gets crazy. Woo!
It is, and she also continues to, consider Joe Biden to be a war criminal, and again, she's not backing down from any of this now. So we'll see where it takes her.
Okay. Well, I'm clearly overcaffeinated at this point, and I am underprepared to talk about Syria, but we're going to do it anyway. Real quick, let's just discuss the fact that Bashar al-Assad is now no longer the strong man over Syria. He has been the culprit of many a poisoning and torturing and murdering of civilians in Syria.
Remember, he's also an ophthalmologist. But it made you think that he was probably using those powers for ill and not good.
I would imagine so. That's kind of grossing me out. On one hand, good news that he's gone.
Right.
On the other, Al-Qaeda adjacent rebels having taken over an entire state, even at the loss to Iranian and Russian power, seems delicate.
Yeah. What the fear is that it's a replay of Libya,
right,
and other places where the dictator, that you abhor, but kept things sort of under control and was at least a point person to deal with, even with bad things, might have been preferable to sort of, the chaotic sort of takeover by, as you mentioned, Al-Qaeda adjacent, ISIS adjacent rebels. And so obviously it's a time of flux, so much so that the Israelis have moved in to southern Syria, taking over certain army positions, because this is like, this is that brief moment before an actual government gets reset up.
Right.
And they're trying to dispose of all the chemical weapons that
yes,
they have, because
because
you can't have, they can't fall into the wrong hands.
this is the source, by the way, of the infamous 2012 red line
Yeah, that's right.
reference by Obama, which was that if there are chemical weapons used in the Syrian civil war, that's when Obama and America decided that the U.S. could use military force. Then that red line came and went.
Right,
and
barrel
nothing
bombs,
happened.
chlorine.
So there are chemical weapons at stake, and Israel is basically like, thank us later. We're
going in. They'll take all the hits. I mean, they're actually launched some airstrikes, and so that is happening. It's unfortunate, shall we say, that Assad decided to get support from the Iranians and from Russia, because now he has to live in Russia and it's December. Versus, when Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines, of course, he put his lot in with the United States and Reagan. And then when he had to flee in where was it, 85, 86, he was able to live in Hawaii.
Oh, well. Also, watch out for windows. A lot of people fall out of them in Russia.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's a good point. So, and I understand nobody wants to get involved in this at this moment. Even President-elect Trump was saying that we shouldn't get involved.
Right.
But always to be mindful that power does abhor a vacuum. Somebody will step in at some point. And the person who's taken over, this young leader now of this group, he's trying to assure people on the outside, unlike the Taliban in Afghanistan, that he's really not. There was a youthful indiscretion when he was sort of, when Baghdadi was his mentor,
right?
And that he's different now,
right?
I sure would like to hope so. And people like Senator Tom Cotton said that, anything could happen, and we'll see, but something good can stay. He was cautiously optimistic. I'm cautiously pessimistic.
I would say I am as well. Yeah. Having seen the Arab Spring and the fruits thereof, in many countries, I am skeptical about what will come to pass here. But it is worth noting that since October 7th, both Iran and many of its proxies are in not great shape.
No.
And largely that, it's funny, I think Jake Sullivan was touting the Biden administration for having strengthened Israel at the expense of Iran just this week.
Wow.
Well, it's true that Israel has been strengthened at the expense of Iran, but only because Israel turned its nose up at Biden's advice and bullying at almost every turn.
Right. Don't go into Rafah. Don't.
So the fact that Hezbollah is hurting, Hamas is almost extinguished, the Houthis are injured, and now Syria's falling apart.
Yeah.
That's not Biden's policy.
No, it's Russia being stretched thin because they've lost they have 600,000 casualties so far, and somebody was just saying to me the other day, it's like 1,000 a day are getting in terms. I mean, they're running. They have a lot. It's a large population. I get it, but that should not be the only sort of logic incorporated into why you think that they could win in Ukraine, because it's getting increasingly difficult for them. And obviously they could not bail out Bashar Assad in Syria.
Right. And
you would think that they could, because it's not that far from where their other operations. They have a couple of bases there. They were not able to do that. And Iran, as you were just saying, I mean, they've taken a couple hits from Israel. They can't help out as well.
Yeah.
So it is telling that their axis right now is in a bad place, which is good for us, but it's not exactly
right. And just
Biden's
reference as we close out this, I was just looking up, and obviously many estimates of such things are unreliable or tricky because of the war zone and what that looks like. But estimates of the total number of deaths in the Syria civil war by various monitors ranged between 580,000 and approximately 617,000,
Wow.
with 110K in 1 year at
Yeah.
one point. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, and many of them are civilians. So
Yeah.
this is very devastating what has gone on under Assad, and we hope maybe it will be less devastating in the future.
Right. And we also sort of, it wasn't in the news for a stretch of time. It was, and then it no longer wasn't, but it didn't mean that nothing was happening. And
Right.
certainly they were biding their time. And then it happened very quickly with Aleppo, and then they cut off access from Damascus to Latakia, which is sort of on the coast. And then I woke up the next morning, and then I find out that they've taken Damascus and Assad has fled.
Yeah.
So there's that. I'll tell you one last thing, Mary Catherine. It did make me look into trying to understand the various tribal warfare that exists in that region,
Right.
And Assad's family, they're the Alawites, but in Jordan they're the Hashemites, right? Alawites are very interesting. They're Muslim. They recognize obviously that Muhammad is the prophet.
Right.
They apparently. Correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, but my Sunni barber told me that they celebrate Christmas.
Oh.
And no dietary restrictions. Does that mean pork and shellfish? This is if I had to choose one of those, no, okay, I would be an Alawite. I'm just saying, it seems like it's a lot of leeway.
I knew we
there.
were building to something inappropriate. I could feel it.
Okay, I'm just saying. All right.
I mean, you want to shop around for these things.
No,
Okay,
yeah,
fair enough. Okay.
absolutely. All right. That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. Follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on Instagram and YouTube. Go Dogs. It has been a lovely episode with you guys. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.